Good morning. I would like to call this January 4th, 2017 meeting of the Planning and Advisory Commission to order. If you will please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I would like to remind those in the audience and those watching on TV that this is the first reading of any rezoning request brought before us today. We will hear a reading of a staff report and ask the applicant to provide a brief overview of the request. We will then give the opportunity for anyone in the audience to speak for or against that request. The commissioners will have any needed discussion and render a decision. The decision will be sent to City Council, who will hear the request 2 more times before rendering the final decision. Minute-wise, we do not have minutes to bring forth. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our first case. And this is a zoning case. It's REZN-12-16-2478. This is a request for a text amendment to amend the text of the Unified Development Ordinance, also known as the UDO, in regards to Section 10.8.2, Certificate of Occupancy, and Section 10.8.1, Building Permit. Mr. Harrod, if you'll read the staff report.
At this time, I'd like to turn it over to John, our Director of Inspections and Codes, and he'll give a presentation.
Wonderful.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Got a copy of the slide, so during my first year here with inspections and codes, I'm just trying to personally clean up a lot of what we have between the UDO and the code and some of the issues I've had with redundancy. So ideally, I just kind of want to go through like I said, what's currently existing in the code is more in the same, identical, and I just want to take what's in the UDO and just have everybody refer to the code, the Columbus Code of Ordinances. What happens is, well, as you know, we're a very litigious society, so I get called into court or on issues during the codes of what requires a building permit, what doesn't, what requires a certificate of occupancy, what doesn't. And when we have things that they're kind of parallel, but they're not quite the same, and you know, lawyers tend to live in the gray. So I tend to always have to figure out what stand are we taking. But if I know that everything is in the Code of Ordinances, then I know that's the rule. Or if everything, you know, whatever's in the UDO, so there's no conflicts. So ideally, more or less, that's the purpose. And what I want to do is literally go through literally what the UDO says and then what the code says. And then we can discuss as to what needs to stay or however. But ideally, I'd like to have a agreement from you all what needs to go into the code. So therefore, if I need to make any future changes, not only I have to come to you all to get everything worked out here, but I also still have to go to council to get anything passed through the ordinances. So the first one is the building permit is required. And you can read it there, but I kind of highlighted the important words. It's initiation of construction, moving, alteration of any building or structure. Now, in the UDO, we have a cost requirement, which is estimated, which is the Director of Inspections and Codes, which is me, will be in excess of $300. And I guess from talking, I see that is, I guess that's a sticking point for some of you all is that cost. Now, ideally, I don't know much construction these days that is less than $300. So I don't know. I guess y'all's concern is maybe possibly raising that number. But my question, we kind of get into taxes and things like that, and I don't specifically deal with that. I'm more dealing with public safety. So say if somebody wants to, one of the biggest complaints we get with the city over in my department is a door. So if somebody has to get their door switched, their door changed out, they do have to come get a permit. And everybody's like, why would they have to get a building permit for a door? And I'm like, I understand on face value. I'm like, okay, if it's the same size door, that's different. But if you go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, a lot of these older houses have 28-inch doors. And now we're up to 30, 32, 36, and they're bigger doors. So therefore, you're making a structural alteration to the front of your house. You've got that header, you've got to make sure that's correctly done, your studs, you got to make sure that there's no rotting, anything like that. So yeah, you probably could get a door for under $300, but ideally the way we look at it in inspections and codes is that you are currently living in that house, but you won't always be living in that house. So therefore, if you're performing that work and you feel you don't need a permit, there is an affidavit that you sign with us that you wouldn't have, that you're performing the work self-performed. But at one time in the future, you will pass or you will move or you will sell your house, and therefore, for us, for liability, we want to make sure that we did at one time inspect that door to make sure that it was correctly installed. And it's not to make sure it's plumb and make sure that structurally it's doing what it's supposed to do. If you're switching out windows, like I said, that if it's a one-for-one, if it's the same frame and opening, no, you wouldn't need a permit. But if you do get a bigger window where one is reduced, you would need it. So, like I said, that's here, and in the code, which is already existing, this is already in the existing section, chapter 8 for the Columbus Code is all the building information. And so here, it says any owner, authorized agent, or contractor, and once again, you have construct, alter, remove, demolish, or change the occupancy of a building will require a permit. So like I said, I know there's going to be questions on that one. I kind of want to go through all of it to kind of show you the redundancy I do have in everything else, and we can kind of come back and directly talk to this one. But that is one there. The power and duties of the building official. It says the Director of Inspections and Code shall be responsible for administrating the code. But in the code, it already says that. The building official is hereby authorized to direct and enforce the provisions of this code, which would be the codes of the City of Columbus, and any local ordinances. You keep going. Site drawings. It asks for single-family and two-family dwellings or multifamily that a plat of the lot showing the outline of the site plan needs to be done. But if you go to the code, it's already there. The drawings shall show the location of the proposed building structure and every existing building or structure on the site. Once again, it's just redundant. Permit application. The application for a building permit shall be made to the Director of Inspections and Codes. Here you go here. When required by the building official, this is what's required of the permit. Permit application form. It tells me that the application of the form furnished by the Inspections and Codes Enforcement Department. That's my department. We've already, here he goes. Each application for a permit shall be filed with the building official with a form. Like I said, it's all the same. Plan preparation. Plan shall be prepared under the supervision or reviewed by an architect registered in Georgia. We already have that. Called design professional shall be an architect or engineer legally registered under the laws of the state regulating the practice of architecture and engineering. Plans examination. Completeness review. The application shall be checked by the Director of Inspections and Codes for completeness. Here we go. The building official shall examine or cause to be examined each application for a permit. Code compliance. The owner shall be responsible for compliance with the UDO and all building code requirements. But it's already there. It shall be the duty of every contractor that makes contracts for the installation of buildings to comply with state and local rules and regulations concerning licensing, which is applicable to the governing authority. Same thing. Issuing a building permit. Such time the owner, the Director of Inspections and Codes, and a building permit shall be issued for the structure. Once again, it already says in the code currently, if the building official is satisfied with the work described in the application, he shall issue a permit. Certificate of occupancy. The Inspections and Codes Enforcement Department stating that the proposed use of the building or land conforms to the requirements of this UDO. And in the section of the code, it already says said certificate shall not be issued until all required systems have been inspected for compliance with technical codes and other applicable laws and ordinance released by the building official. Service utilities, same thing. The UDO section that says it has to be contacted by the Director of Inspections and Codes before utilities can be activated on the site. We already have that no person shall make connections from a utility until released by the building official and the certificate of occupancy has been issued. And one more, temporary certificates. This is one I'm not a fan of that I'd like to change, is that we have a temporary certificate of occupancy may be issued for a period not to exceed 6 months. What happens there typically is real estate, when you get your certificate of completion for the property, when it's done, it's done. So typically we don't have issues there. We have issues more on the commercial side where a Walmart or a Family Dollar wants to open early, and so they want a temporary CO so they can order liquor or whatever. They have to get their alcohol licenses and things like that. We typically frown on that because what happens is if there's any other issues, once they've got that CO, those contractors are out the door. They're not coming back. So I don't particularly like that we have one in here that we give a temporary CO. And like I said, the way the code has it read right now, it says it may be issued. And I like to do that. So it depends on if it was a case that we would need to do it, we could do it. But I don't want that loophole that oh, you in the UDO, you say you can do it for 6 months. I don't want to, I'd rather us take it case by case to determine what needs to be done. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, I know the big one is on the permit and the cost number, but the rest of it, I think you can see that it's pretty redundant, and it's just the intent of having it in one place instead of me having to revise things in both locations. Like I said, I'm just trying to clean up what we have just so it makes more sense. And so if I'm referring a citizen or someone to it, then and like I said, I'm not touching BHAR, BZA, all those things, facade board, all that staying the same. It's literally that section 10.8, which just refers to building permitting, and I just refer all of that to the code.
Commissioners, any questions or discussion? Mr. Dudley?
On the building permit, is this in effect eliminates the $300 threshold and just leaves it to your discretion as to whether the permit is required without making you make a cost estimate? Is that correct?
Well, the cost estimate, we still, if anybody comes in, like I said, if people have questions, that's the issue. You have some people that want to come because they want to know if they need a permit, but then you have other people that are going to perform work and not talk to us at all. And ideally, where I want to start with this is to be able to create a better framework to explain to people, here's a list. These things do not require a permit. These things do. And I'm starting here at the UDO to try to clean it up because we get a lot of calls. People say, if you re-shingle your roof, you don't need a permit until you get into the decking, because then now you're making a structural alteration. A lot of people don't know that. You see what I'm saying? But it's not written specifically anywhere spelling that all out. And so the threshold, I had an issue with the deck, and the guy came in and he said that he went and purchased his own. He went to the scrapyard, he built the deck, he got all the material, and it was under $300. And he was like, I should be able to build my deck and not pull a permit. And I said, sir, and like I said, on the public safety side, I'm like, you're installing a deck, we go out and review it, and it doesn't meet any of the deck guidelines, then, like I said, that we know that it's in violation. But the guy, if he would have pulled a permit, showed us drawings to let us know what was being installed, then we would have been able to keep him before he poured those concrete footers that weren't deep enough. We could have prevented that. So I know people are afraid of government and afraid of asking us. I always feel like we're going to charge them, but I'd rather he tried to use that loophole and it didn't work, and then he got mad at me, and then we literally had to go to court and then had to get him to take it down.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If he had not pulled a permit, how would you all have ever known to go inspect that deck?
Well, we typically.
Because what you're telling me is he didn't pull a permit, but you're saying, however, if we had gone and looked at it and knew that it was incorrect, we wouldn't have approved it. But if you don't pull a permit, you're not coming by my house. You don't know that I'm building a deck.
That's correct. And literally, what we do is if we get a complaint, like I said, we have people that will call on others because they had to go
a neighbor will
permit,
tattle or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so, unfortunately, we have to review those as well because it's sent through 311 as a complaint, and then we have to review it. And then once we get to it, and then we kind of start the process from there. But no, we're not looking over people's fences to see if they added a lean-to or they closed in their. I mean, we don't have that time.
Right.
We're
Sure.
checking other things.
My question would be, the UDO was codified after the regular ordinances, obviously, because it's an appendix to the code. Were the specific sections for building permits, things like that, were those written before or after the UDO was put in place?
When was the UDO put in place? And then from the last revision I see, it was 2009. So it was
You're-
after, no, what I just read, all those sections were put in, I believe the resolution was in 2009, when these text amendments previous were put in.
That modifies the code or the UDO?
Well, it modifies the UDO. Those were all,
Okay, so it was modification to the UDO.
that's correct. Because if you go back to the code, I understand the reasoning, because if you go back and look at the code, we actually still have a contractor's registration board, and that has been gone for years and years, but it's technically still in the code. So I think they made revisions to the UDO so they wouldn't have to attack this whole thing in the code. And so,
And what I'm getting at is more of a question of process, which would be a pain for you. If council established the UDO after this, after the code sections were in there, to me, it seems like their intent would be, rather than for the UDO direct back into the code to direct into the UDO, so that there is a review process like this, which this body has review over. I mean, we don't make any decisions really, just a recommendation. So my question would be is, before we start pointing out of the UDO back into ordinance, what does the city attorney and council's intent, what was their intent when they enacted the UDO? Should they have not struck the right language in the code? And that would be my concern, is it, we're going back and pointing it back to old stuff rather than the old stuff pointing to the new stuff.
I don't know if the time when they adopted the UDO, if there was language inside that adoption that struck the language that was inside the city code.
Well, it obviously isn't, because that's
Right.
what we're dealing with.
So-
But I guess that's my question is, it's almost like this should be, we need to look at council's intent on what were they intending for building permits and COs back at the time. And if they've added the new UDO, then the council's intent at that time, I would assume, is to supplant the old code. And so we're pointing, in a sense, pointing the code into the wrong direction. It needs to be modified. This council needs to change the ordinance to point to the UDO rather than the way we're going now. If that's the timeline.
well, then-
if that is in fact the timeline.
well, like I said, well, then my question is then do I move, because I have all my, because the code of ordinances also goes through all my trade permits. So then do I need to move all of that to the UDO? Like I said, right now, there's only two sections. It refers to building permits and certificate of occupancy. But I have my plumbing code, my building code, my housing code, my electrical code. All of that is still
back in the code.
in the code, and it's still
Right.
referenced. So that's what I'm saying. These two things are the only thing for me that's an outlier. I see what you're saying, but for me, it's the other way around, because all the rest of my references and local ordinances are over here in the code, and I have only the building permit and the CO. And like I said, if it's revised to the point where it's taken out of the code and it's over here, I'm fine with that too. I just need one place
Absolutely.
so I can say, hey,
So it makes more
refer to
sense.
this or
Absolutely.
refer to that.
And
so,
that's-
however, I'm fine with it. I
And
just
I-
need to make sure that, like I said, I've got a lot of mixed signals going on.
And that's why I would say that the question really ought to be asked of the city attorney and the council as to what was their intent, because they specifically pulled these two things into the UDO and not the other way around, because the UDO post-dates, assuming this is correct, the UDO post-dates the code sections in question. And so that, now, if you show me that the sections we need to change were modified by council after the UDO, then absolutely, let's point it outward. But to me, they pulled these two things into the UDO on purpose and should have stricken the code section when they adopted the UDO.
John, what was Lucy's recommendation?
Well, Lucy wants to come to, she's kind of on the same page with me that it's consistent. So regardless of either we copy it here and it's there, or we copy it there and it's here, that it's in one place and there's
Right.
not two different interpretations of the same thing. So she's fine. We just need to know where we need to do it. If I make the changes and it just is in the UDO, that's fine. And we'll strike, because like I said, I'm making all kinds of revisions to the code, because there's a whole section in there referring to the state licensing board that we don't do anymore, that the state handles. And so she's already ready to take that out. And like I said, if we take that out and we say refer to the UDO,
for building permit requirements and CO requirements, that's fine. She just wants it as well, so when we're having to go to legal counsel, we can explain to them, this is the definition of a building permit. This is the definition of a CO.
And my only thought on why they pulled these two is when they created the UDO, they created this review process, which was the Planning Commission, Advisory Commission, to give citizens an extra step and give council a buffer on issues. And so there's a reason that they pulled these two out into the UDO and thereby adding a review process for COs and building permits, the text itself. And it'd be my recommendation that we hear something from, the council, some definition from that time of what was their intent pointing one way or the other.
I don't disagree. Mr. Kenner? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Davis. I saw his mic on. Sorry, Mr. Davis.
John, my concern is this. You mentioned screen doors and doors itself. You're saying that a person want to get a screen door put on after one, probably the screen has come out. You're saying that you're asking for a $300 building permit on that. Is this the way I'm understanding that?
No, sir. No, sir. Typically, if it's somebody, if they want to replace their screen door,
Yeah.
that wouldn't require a permit. But if you're taking your door and frame out and you're making a bigger door, yes.
So it's more, what you're saying is more structure change
That's correct.
than it is to replace something that was there originally.
Correct. Repairs, like I said, it's kind of gray. We like to meet with the owner and find out how far they're going, because some person will say, oh, we're just replacing the soffit. And we'd be like, okay. And then we come out and then the whole side of the house they're adding a whole wing to their house. So it's really hard to kind of say, this is exactly what it is. But like I said, we get a lot of calls from roofers specifically from out of town. They'll call in and say, hey, we're coming to reshingle a roof. And we're like, we would consider that property maintenance, and they wouldn't require a permit. But once they start, we go out there, now they've already called us, and we go out there and we see decking is missing and we see insulation is being moved around. We're like, that's a whole nother ball of wax. So I typically like this to hold the line of structural alterations, because if you come in and remodel your bathroom, we're not asking for a permit. You're doing tile on your floor, you're changing your toilets out. We're not asking for a building permit for that. If you're remodeling your kitchen, we're not looking for permit. We're not going after that. We're looking for, now if you knock your wall out between your great room and your kitchen, yes, because that's a structural alteration. So we try, that's kind of the line we're trying to create, to say what would or wouldn't need a permit.
Mr. Kenner?
Well, as you're aware, there's some concern in this group relative to the $300.
Yes,
so
sir.
I guess my question, maybe two questions. One, should there be a dollar value in there at all, if it's a structural alteration? And if there is a dollar value, should it? How long has the $300 number been there? Has it been there since the 1970s or since 2005, or how long has it been there?
We'd have to, I'm not sure. Like I said, that section at the bottom, it just says 2005 originally, and then it says revised, and it says 2009 for the UDO, so.
The number values that's coming from the UDO, right?
That's correct, the number value is in UDO.
Then it was either 2009, 2005.
But I'd like to hear the answer to your question is, should there be a number value?
Should there be a dollar value at all? If it's an alteration, which is a structural thing.
Correct.
Then should there be a dollar value at all?
Me, ideally, I would say no. Like I said, I know the other elephant in the room with taxes and assessing, and that part I don't personally deal with. But with public welfare, like I said, we have had people that have, went to Lowe's and tried to install a door, and then they'll call us because they didn't get the header beam the right size, and it's starting to sag because they pulled it out and that wood was rotten. So, but you can go pick up a door, you can go to antique, you can go get a door for less of that threshold and be okay. And so, like I said, I understand the other side of that, but on my side, I'm looking at public welfare, and public safety. So I don't think there should be a number. But like, I just know people, well, they're gonna say, oh, well, now they're gonna make everything a permit. And that's not the case. But people are too afraid to call to find out. They rather just, get caught and find out later than, pray for ignorance. So,
Sounds like there's some public education that needs to be.
Mr.
Greenblatt.
Let me go back to your previous example that if you're going to remodel your kitchen or your bathroom, you don't need a permit. If you're going to start rewriting electrical, what happens at that point?
You would get an electrical permit.
But only an electrical
That's
permit,
correct.
not a
You would-
building permit?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Because any electrical or plumbing, you would get a plumbing. That would be a trade
They're
permit.
different.
And
yeah.
they're totally, like I said,
I
that's
just-
$50, and that's separate.
Just wanted clarification.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
And I think that's a confusion for a lot of people.
Correct,
Mm-hmm.
correct.
Mr. Dudley?
Still confused in that it looks to me like you are proposing eliminating the dollar limit because the current language in the UDO says you would need the $300, but your proposed language just refer to the code, and the code doesn't have a dollar limit. It just says any construction, enlarging, alteration, moving, et cetera. So what you are proposing is to, in effect, eliminate the dollar limit, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions or comments or discussion amongst the commissioners? Mr. Bollinger?
You had mentioned you had a concern with the 6-month temporary. Are you going to remove that as well?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Then, like I said, we get that, like I said, if you unfortunately give people an inch, they'll take them out.
No,
And so,
I'm not.
Part of that was you using the language of may, right? Didn't you say, he was saying something about we may?
yeah, we may,
Yeah.
which means
Right.
in
It
if
gives
instance,
you-
it would
gives
be,
you the option.
But if you see it in the UDO currently, they'd be like, oh, well, you allow 6 months temporary CO, so that's what I'd like,
Right.
and I'd rather it be a case-by-case issue where we deal with it.
No, I
If-
agree.
And I appreciate that, and I'm not in disagreement with that, and I'm glad you're removing the dollar amount. My only concern, and I hear the spirit of what you're doing, and I agree with the spirit of what you're doing. My concern is there's the spirit of the law, and then there's the law. So when we say alter, that word is very subjective. I hear that you're saying structure, and I agree with that when it's a safety concern. My other concern is that that could be used to say if you touch anything. And as long as that language is in there, it gives anyone the opportunity to redefine that word. So if there's a way to wordsmith this so that it says structural type changes rather than just
Any altercation.
kind of the ambiguous alter. That would be my recommendation.
Like I said, my next step is, like I said, I want to make sure I had y'all's blessing, and then to meet with the city attorney. I'm actually meeting with her tomorrow afternoon to try to, work some of the words out. Because like I said, I literally just I copied and pasted what's currently in the existing
No,
code.
and I understand
So
that.
I just wanted to kind of, before I got too far down the road, and like, well, we don't like this, and then I'm having to come back and
And
rework it.
I
So-
appreciate you going to those steps and working with us. I just don't want us to exacerbate this and carry it on in and vote and say yes. And now we've taken something that all of us, I think, collectively have agreed needs to be changed, and yet we're going to vote and say, well, let's just make it even more complex. And I hear the spirit of what you're doing, and I don't disagree with where you're going with that.
Mr. Kenner?
Could you just summarize, like 1, 2, 3, the takeaway points that you think are coming from this discussion?
Takeaways, like I said, 1 is to remove the dollar amount from the building permit to, that's 1. 2, to clarify, like you said, to structural alterations to a property. So therefore, that definition of a building permit is better defined. 3, to, I guess I'm not sure. I guess we have to find out a little bit more research on which way we want the UDO to reference the code or the code to reference the UDO. Either way, like I said, we're fine and Lucy's fine. She just wanted to make sure it's in one place so we don't have 2 different definitions. And then 3 is to remove the time frame from the temporary CO.
I appreciate the work you're putting in because it's a bit mundane. Mr. Greenblatt?
To Mr. Bollinger's question, And I believe you just clarified the whole thing. You said a structural alteration.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
in his, yeah.
So if we were to remove alter and put structural alteration, would that more define your need?
It would for me. I mean, my concern is I have talked to several citizens, and we could not come up with anything that you could do that's less than $300 other than paint.
Yeah. And,
you know, if you go buy an exterior door and you say, well, I've got a wooden front door and I want to go to a metal front door.
That's an alteration.
It's 3 hinges. I'm not changing the header, the framing, or anything, but that's an alteration that, bang, I got to go get a building permit, or I've at least got to write up something and get an architect to look at it. And I mean, I think we're burdening the citizens way too much for what I consider non-structural type changes. And I just don't think we should burden the citizens that way. And I think this $300 had to have come from the 60s or something when that was a lot of money, but I like taking the dollar out. But
And adding
again,
the
the
word
spirit of the law and the law are two different things. And when you put subjective words in there, then anybody, if you move on to become mayor, then your replacement is going to come in and say, well, alter means if you touch anything, if you pull a nail, I want a building permit, which triggers that process and then triggers the tax commissioner's process, and all of a sudden we've got this whole ball of wax rolling.
So I'm all for structural alterations. That's fine. Like I said, we get over 12,000 permits a year, so my inspector having to stop to go look at a front door, it's not, not on his top list of things to do. But we can, I have no problem with changing that to say that. Like I said, I just have to get with Lucy and Clifton and figure out where it needs to be, whether it be in the UDO as the definition of a building permit and a CO, or in the Code of Ordinances.
I know, I gotta find out. So from a process standpoint, help me out here. I mean, because it sounds like from the subject matter that's been brought forward, I don't think that's the issue so much as it is this whole UDO versus code. So how do we
I think what you may want to do is on, like what Mr. Brennan was talking about, you can table it for us to come back and bring this back to you so that we can
get that
resolve
part of
that
it?
question, and then you can make a recommendation.
Yeah. So I think, for your purposes, I think that the suggestions that you're bringing forward are not the heartburn right here. I think we support you in your cleaning up effort and getting the redundancy out. But it does sound like we need to table this until we get some information, be it from Mr. Fay or what have you, in terms of the UDO and the code. I've got comprehensive plan in my brain. So, do I hear a motion to, Mr. Kenner, to table the,
Yes, I move this be tabled until these items that we've all agreed to need to be looked in have been looked into and reported back here.
do I hear a second? Mr. Greenblatt. Okay, so we will table this and look forward to getting the answer to that and then letting you move on. And
All right.
thank you again for the work you're putting into this. And that actually is the only case that we have today. We do need to, you had been emailed by Mr. Harrod the calendar for 2017. I don't need a motion and all that since you were given this ahead of time, but if you've had an opportunity to look at the dates, is there any objection or questions regarding the dates? Okay. Well, then we will submit them as approved then.
Okay.
Okay. And we have our next meeting, January the 18th.
We have, sorry, Chairman. We have one more thing we'd like to show you guys. We have Shane from IT. He's going to give you a presentation on SharePoint, and that is what we're going to start moving to get you your packets so that you can go in and have your own login to go into SharePoint, and then I'll have everything uploaded, and you'll get a reminder the minute that I upload it to SharePoint. So when I upload the new agenda, if I upload that, or if I upload the application or the staff stuff, you'll get an email at the moment that I
And
do
it'll
it.
tell
So
you to
then-
check that, to log in and see
Correct.
what else has been
Yeah.
added.
So-
Oh, that's good. So an alert.
Yes, so we're trying to step up the ballgame to get you everything you need in a more timely manner.
Fabulous. That would be wonderful. Okay, thank you. Sit tight, guys.
So it was kind of brought to my attention that, like he said, y'all have an issue getting to your, getting your packets and information and stuff like that. We've kind of decided to move to this. It can be accessed, anywhere in the world as long as you're on a computer. All I need is an email address. You set yourself up with a password. Like he said, anytime you get anytime he uploads a document, it'll send you an email. And you just have to click a link and it'll bring you to this. Right there, you see at the very top, it says any announcements, say if you're not going to have a meeting or he wants everybody to know something, he can put it there. Below that's all of the documents that he's uploaded this month. And if he scrolls down, you'll see a calendar. And he can go and put all of your meetings on that calendar. It's just listed off there. Scroll up a little bit for me. If there's a document that you need from last month or the month before, he can scroll back to the top and click Documents on the left side. Or Calendar if you wanted to see the calendar. And it's all right there. You'll all have access to it. And it'll all be listed there for you. You can just click on it and download it.
And so when will this take effect?
When would you like it to take effect?
We are going to start it. We're going to start it by next meeting.
Okay.
So on the 18th.
Okay.
And then we'll give you 30 days to get used to it.
Okay.
And then that will be implemented.
And you'll give him our email addresses that you have?
What we're going to do is he will have all your email addresses, and then we're going to send you a link for you to be able to log into it and create your password
Gotcha.
for each one. And then you all will have separate passwords that you created and links to your, we're not going to have to recreate new emails for you. You'll use your current email that I
Good.
have.
Good. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Look
Thank y'all.
forward to that. Mr. Bollinger.
One quick question, sorry.
Yes,
Are there
sir.
any specific firewall ports that are going to have to be open for this access? I'm going through a
No,
very-
it's fully internet-based, so if you can get to Google, you can get to this.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Any other information or anything else that we need to bring forward, Mr. Harrod?
We don't have anything else at this time.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.